Hey guys, and welcome to the video. If you clicked on the video today, it means you're in the process of moving to Australia, or perhaps you're just starting to think about making the big move. And hopefully my checklist of 12 things to do before you immigrate to Australia comes in handy. Stay tuned for tips and tricks from our own experience. I love making videos for you about our move to Perth. We recently made the move in April 2022 and are starting to really feel like this is home. It still feels like the best move we've made, and we're just so happy to call this beautiful city our new home. So if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, to stick around for more hacks, tips, and just what life is sort of like living in Perth, WA. That the channel has now got a community status, so we've reached 1,000 subscribers, and I'm just so enjoying putting out content for you guys. If you are making the move to Perth or to Australia in the near future, please drop this emoji in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. The idea of the channel is to grow this community of people so we can share our experiences, our knowledge, and we can all learn from each other. Immigrating is a big move. It can be filled with a lot of emotions like anxiety, stress, obviously, doubt, and definitely homesickness, and just wondering if you've made the right choice. I feel by supporting one another, and if we're all in the same boat, we can just have that additional support and I think reassurance that you've made the right move for you and your family. Let's jump straight into our list of 12 things to do, your pre-immigration checklist for moving to Australia. So I'm going to be reading them off my phone just so I've got a quick reference. The first thing I recommend you do is set up a timeline for yourself, so to see basically when you plan to make the move. If you've already got a job and an employment start date, then it's very straightforward. You have an exact date that you know you need to be in Australia, and that would be your goal. But perhaps you've just started the process and you're not yet sure when you're going to get your visas approved, or if you're just starting to consider the move, have that goal in place as early as possible. So perhaps you want to make your move in a year's time, 2 years time, 5 years time, whatever it is. Have that date written down so that you know sort of where you've got to work towards, what you've got to work towards, and you can work backwards from there. So working backwards from the date you plan to travel, I mean, you want to consider things like, are you going to ship household furniture? Are you going to maybe need to declutter and downsize your home? So if you've only got a couple of months, you've got to do that as quickly as possible. But if you've got, 2 years before you immigrate, it gives you enough time to start downsizing your life and selling off things you might not need. For example, if you're driving 2 cars and you know you're going to be immigrating in a year's time, perhaps you could get by with 1 car for that year and sell the 1 car you have, put that money into a savings account, and already just start simplifying your life so that when it comes time to actually board that flight, you've got as little to worry about as possible. You also want to consider items that you might be able to gift to charity or to family members who might need it, or to start selling off extra appliances. Maybe you've got multiple fridges or multiple TVs, and the less stuff you have to worry about when you make your move, the better. Then you also want to give yourself enough time to make arrangements, to see family and friends, have a get-together to say goodbye to everyone. And the sooner you can inform your family and friends of your idea, the better, because in that way you can enjoy quality time with them and people are aware that you're planning to make that permanent move. So plan all of that, and it takes a lot of emotional stress out of it when it comes time to leaving and saying goodbye as well. My neighbor has just started their gardening, so you might hear a weed eater. I have to film right now. My little girl's asleep, so please excuse if you have any background noise. Hopefully with the microphone it's not going to be too bad. Right, so the second point I've put on is to research Australian banks. So this is really important. You want to make sure you get your money across as wisely as possible with as little cost as possible, and also that you've got a bank with quite low rates. So do your homework. Australia does have what's considered the big 4 banks, just Google Big Four banks, and that will give you an idea of those banks. What we did, we opted to go with Commonwealth when we started our journey in Australia, but they allowed us to open an account offshore once we had our visa, so that was really useful, and we could get our bank account ready to go so that by the time we got to Australia, it was already open. We just had to go and collect our cards. So I'd strongly recommend doing that. But a couple of months in, we did do some further research and we ended up going with ING. They just have really great low rates and it seemed to make a lot of sense. They've got very low bank fees. So yeah, opt for that if it's something you're open to. We also took a lot of advice from the Barefoot Investor. I have mentioned him in my previous videos. Really great book to read if you're moving across as an expat. I'll link below my money saving tips as a new expat to Australia. And yeah, just read up on that because financially things are different here and the way things work are different, and you don't want to lose any money in the process of learning how things work. So I'd strongly recommend that. Then third point ties into that, and that's going to be researching your superannuation fund or your retirement annuity. So that's compulsory if you're employed in Australia that you have a super fund, and usually your employer will have one or a few super funds that they're using, and you will automatically be they will automatically put you under that super. However, you have the option to choose a different super in some circumstances if you find one that you agree with more or that you feel will give you more benefit. So do some research into what supers are available and out there. And also we found Barefoot incredibly useful for that information. Then the fourth thing you need to do in your home country is to notify your local tax authority that you're no longer going to be a tax resident, and there are a whole bunch of different criteria that will either qualify you or disqualify you as a tax resident. I'm not an expert in the field, so be sure to reach out to your local tax authority and fill out any paperwork. For us, it was relatively straightforward. We had to fill out a form from SARS in South Africa and provide them with all the supporting documentation, our travel dates, and basically our proof of employment, and just to show that we were not going to be residing in South Africa anymore. And then they issue you with a letter which acts as a notice that you are not a tax resident. Different countries have different tax agreements, so just do your homework and make sure you're on track and everything is settled. It's so much easier to get this done before you immigrate and leave your home country. Then point number 5 is to research potential neighborhoods and suburbs that would work for you and your family according to your interests, where you're working. You cannot secure a property while you're offshore, especially for Western Australia. I'm not sure about the other states, but we had to do walkthroughs and physically be in the country in order to secure a lease. So it's not something you can do beforehand, but what you could do is familiarize yourself with neighborhoods, suburbs, so that when you hit the ground here, you're able to book those inspections and go to a number of house openings to help you choose your rental as quickly as possible. The market is really tough, so you want to get out there as quickly as you can, and just being familiar with the neighborhoods and suburbs around Perth is going to help you do that. So once you actually have a travel date in mind, I would say it's now time to start considering what amount of luggage you're going to be traveling with. So obviously you want to try and travel with as little as possible, but have enough with you to sustain yourself until you get a container with the bulk of your goods. If you're not shipping a container, then you're going to want to make peace with budgeting to buy clothes or those essential items while you're here in the interim, and just get yourself set up completely again in a new country. So things to take into consideration would be what season you're landing in, how long it might take for a container to get to your destination in Australia. Perhaps you're landing in the summer months, but your container is only going to get to you in autumn or winter, and that might mean you need to pack clothing for both seasons or budget to purchase those clothes while you're here. Things like children's toys can be quite bulky to travel with, but you want to pack in a few things that you can, so you save yourself having to rush out and buy some essential toys in those early days. So yeah, just plan wisely. The earlier you start doing that, setting aside items you're going to take with you. Maybe you want to construct yourself a capsule wardrobe, so you've got lots of mix and match items, and selecting a few of your children's toys and essentials that you can already pack and start weighing to stay on track with your luggage allowance. Or you're also going to make peace with paying a couple of extra kilos of excess baggage. That's absolutely fine, but at least if you do it beforehand, you know what you're in for at the airport and how much you should set aside for that. I get tons of questions on my social media from you about schools and kindergartens and how to enroll your child, and I've really, we're just at that beginning stage. So my toddler is only 2 now, and she's not yet ready to go to kindy. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I have been doing quite a bit of research. So a very useful website is education.wa.edu.au. So I will be putting that website down below, and hopefully you find all your information there if you are moving to Perth. But I'm sure each state in Australia has a very similar website. So it clearly lays out what you need for enrollments. But I would say this ties in very strongly with if you're coming across on a PR visa, then your child is eligible for public schooling, and you would not have to pay a huge amount. So then you're going to have to choose a zone to live in that you want to send your child to that school. Choosing a school for your child is a really personal choice, and it's going to depend on where you're working and where you plan to live and what suburbs you're in. So I cannot say what is the best school for you or what is the best area for you, but there's so much information out there for you to decide what would work best for your family and your child. Get this done as quickly as possible so that when you do get to your city, and if you do reach Perth, you can quickly book inspections at the schools and go and visit them and try and get your child enrolled as quickly as possible. There are also, if you are planning on private schools, you would need to perhaps get your child on a list as quickly as you can. I have heard that private schools that are in high demand tend to fill up very quickly and places are limited. So a lot of parents put their child's name on a list a couple of years before they're even due to start kindergarten or primary school. So yeah, completely up to you, but rather try be ahead of the game and save yourself additional stress. You want to try and draw up an essentials budget for when you first arrive in your destination in Australia or Perth. You really just want to try and cover as many of the essentials as you can. So working on a grocery budget for the week, what items you might have to go out and get the kids so they can survive in a hotel room or an Airbnb, wherever you might be staying. Set aside a bit of extra money for dining out, because you're probably going to be relying on that the first couple of days. So yeah, just try and do yourself as comprehensive a budget as possible. Things like looking at Uber Eats or looking at online shopping, supermarket sites would be very helpful, just so you can sketch out a rough idea of budgets as well. Then once you have your short-term accommodation booked for your first month or two after arriving, I strongly recommend researching the area that accommodation is based in. So you can already look into what supermarkets you can shop at in that area, research local parks for you to take your children and get them out the house. You also want to look at things like a 24-hour pharmacy where you might find one of those. Get yourself registered at a doctor or a GP in the area. The last thing you want is for your kids all to get sick and you've got to go and find a doctor from scratch. Try and get that all done your first week of being in your new city. It just takes a lot of stress off, and even if you don't continue using that doctor after a couple of months, at least you've registered there and you have someone to call and go to and get your child an appointment. Traveling with children internationally, there is probably going to be a dip in their immune system, and they're going to be faced with a ton of different bugs that they haven't been exposed to. So there is a good chance that your children might get ill and you might get ill as well. So yeah, just be prepared and get your name down at a doctor. It's also a good idea to visit your doctor and get any chronic medication scripts you might need in advance. Perhaps you want to get a supply of 2 to 3 months, just so you don't have to worry about getting that sorted when you touch down in Australia. Then if you want to look at making copies of all of your essential documents, this just takes the pressure off in the event something gets lost or damaged during your traveling. Traveling internationally, and especially to Australia, can be quite a long journey. You can go through multiple airports with family. It's a lot to keep tabs of. So the chance that you do lose something important is pretty good. So yeah, just be ahead of the game, and I recommend getting passport copies done, marriage certificate copies done, getting everything certified or stamped by a commissioner of oaths, and keeping a couple of these copies on hand in a file in the event you lose something. It's much more difficult to get all of that admin done when you're offshore, we've left your home country, so rather get it sorted out before you leave. Then lastly, Once you've booked your ticket, you want to research any transit airports that you're passing through. So for example, we often pass through Singapore, so have a look and see where you can take your child to play and burn some energy, where the coffee shops and restaurants are, restrooms, just to make your trip as fun and relaxed as possible after a very stressful build-up usually to the traveling. That's it for today's video, guys. I really hope these 12 points and checklists do come in handy. I'll be sure to link the written version down below so that you can access it and hopefully print it out if you need to and construct your own plan or checklist from there. I really just want this channel to be a place of encouragement for you. If you are on this journey of immigration, at times it can feel overwhelming and stressful and there's a lot to get done, but it is absolutely worth it if you remember your reasons for wanting to move here and start a new life and just enjoy what Australia has to offer. It's really phenomenal and we are loving every single day that we are here. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos about life here in Perth, Australia. I'll catch you in the next one.